You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey all, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. My name is Clark from 5 Card Guys on Instagram and 5cardguys.com. With me as usual are my co-hosts, Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards and John, who is Trade You at Recess. You can follow us too on Instagram at Cards to the Moon, where we post some informative IG reels and clips of our past shows. So please follow us there as well. All right, off the top today, if you haven't heard already, the 2022-23 Bowman University Inception set will contain the first autograph card of the surefire number 1 overall pick in the upcoming NBA draft next month. That is, of course, Victor Wembanyama. It'll also feature an autograph card of Caitlin Clark, who was lights out at the recent NCAA Women's basketball tourney playing for Iowa. So, your thoughts on the upcoming set? Do you think this will be huge because of the first Wemby auto, or do you think we should temper our expectations because it is coming in the Bowman U Inception set, which isn't exactly a super popular set to begin with, and it won't be a card of Wemby in his future NBA uniform. Obviously, the draft hasn't happened yet. So, your thoughts?
I don't know too much about Bowman Inception. I don't think I'm necessarily sold on it, but it is Wemby, a lot of anticipation, but I did hear that there was a Bowman U Chrome coming out.
Right.
So this is next month. So I seen a picture on blowoutcards.com. Mm-hmm. So they have a shop there, and they were saying they had an image of Wemby's first Chrome or first Bowman auto.
Okay.
Because
wait, so this isn't Chrome?
No, this
paper,
is Inception.
right?
You're talking about Inception right now, right? Bowman Inception, Bowman University
Bowman
Inception.
University too.
Bowman University, I believe, is the brand, right? And then they have Bowman University Inception as Wemby's first auto. Right, basically, first auto on release for tops doing basketball, even. And then now in June 2nd, there's a release called Bowman University Chrome, I believe, on June 2nd. So this is where, when I was researching Inception, I was like, I don't know, Wemby's going to be a chase regardless. So I think that's going to be a hot product. I'll give an example, 2016 Bowman Chrome first, Vladdy Guerrero Jr. You guys are all aware of that's his first Chrome card. Did you guys know that a 2016 Topps Finest Mystery Auto of Vladdy existed as well?
No,
did not.
Right?
Not really.
So, to me, that's the way I feel about Bowman Inception, right? After the hype dies down, is it something that people are gonna, remember other than it being Wemby's first auto? But you take that a step further, will Bowman University Chrome, will people actually believe that that's kind of the first Chrome or first Bowman for basketball now? Mm-hmm. And this is the start of a new kind of, release in basketball in terms of first Bowmans, right? So I don't know if it will stick or not. I'm not sure if I like the idea, but it's relatively new. I know, first Bowmans are huge in baseball, and that's part of the reason why, baseball, I believe, is hot because, there's a lot of iconic cards in that, but will it translate into basketball? Because now Topps has, I believe, Bowman University is a brand that they released last year, 2022. And like I said, you probably didn't even know that at the end of the day. So will it be the continuation of that? Maybe not, because Wemby's there, but other than that, I don't see too much demand, because I think there's other products that might be a little better down the road.
Interesting. So Bowman U Inception, is that a paper product?
I believe it's a paper product, yeah. And right. I was looking at some of the stuff. I think it's a 100 card set. I don't know, man. I'm not a big fan of all these crazy designs with like colors and stuff, and that's the way Inception is usually.
Yeah, right.
So I'm not completely sold on, as a collector. Like I'm not like, oh, I can't wait until Inception comes out, So
Okay,
could be a cool product for kids.
Yeah, definitely. No, don't get me wrong. From a collector's perspective, I think it's a great release. Like, I think having that hype of Wemby, in it. But here's another example. You take Luka. You remember Luka's, he had a Panini's contender auto with his, non-team jersey, and that was really early. Right. That was one of his, I guess, earlier autos. Right, it's with his it was like a white jersey because it was something that wasn't licensed. Yeah, the EuroLeague or whatever. It wasn't even EuroLeague because it was like he was wearing a wife beater. I shouldn't even say that, I guess, but he was like, it didn't look like, oh, I want that card, but it still held value, but it wasn't like a Luka auto from Optic Contenders or something, right?
Right. Or National Treasures.
Or Flawless.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dang. Man, my thoughts are like completely changed now because number one, I didn't know Bowman's. I thought we were about to talk about Bowman University Chrome, but I didn't know this is like a design that's similar to Topps Inception, number one. And then number two, I didn't know it was paper product. So that's really making me think differently. What I will say, I'm going to speak more on the Bowman University Chrome side. I think it's clear that Topps Bowman is making an attempt to make Bowman first a thing in basketball by coming out early. And obviously last year, not many people knew about it. There wasn't, I don't know if there's any like big chases. So if they're going to make this a thing, man, by putting in Wembanyama and Caitlin Clark autos, like, that's the way to do it. Like, if they're going to get any eyes on this and create some crazy awareness, like, this is the way to do it. So good on them for being able to land those autos. I did see still images. I don't know if they were rendered or if they were live images, but it looked like they were sticker autos, which really made me go, oh, man. Right. So I'm really hoping it's not sticker, but, man, good on them, man. Like, I think it's still going to be a huge chase. Like, it's still an auto. Like, I think everyone's going to go after Wembanyama and then Caitlin Clark. I mean, I've been following Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers for the last couple of years, and she was clearly the star of March Madness across men's and women's basketball. So, a huge name to also add to Wembanyama. I mean, people should be excited for it. It's pretty cool, to be honest.
Yeah, it's. I don't know. I feel conflicted because of everything you mentioned about the Bowman U Inception set, but this is his first auto, right? This is his first one. But really, I mean, at the end of the day, the right move in terms of investing is if you hit, you sell.
Absolutely.
Right?
Immediately. Yes.
It won't be any higher than it is with the hype that it's receiving now. Right. So that's the play. It'll definitely be a chase, especially the 1-of-1 parallel. That's gonna go for a lot of money, right? Whether you like Bowman U Inception or not, that's gonna be worth a lot until the next set comes out with the Victor Wembanyama autograph. So the play is you flip as soon as possible because there will be a buyer. It'll be in demand and until more autos become available for Wemby. And the other thing is too, just I see what they're trying to do with Bowman U, like trying to make prospecting in basketball a thing, but I just don't think it'll translate. Studs, young studs in basketball usually just kind of like they get drafted super young anyways.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Whereas in baseball,
one and done in NCAA. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So in baseball, you get drafted super young. And
what if they do? What if Bowman U becomes like high school included, like kind of like the prospecting? So you got like LeBron James didn't go to college, so it's like you would basically have LeBron James first round.
Yeah. You know what? I think that'll be the only way it works. Yeah. You gotta. But then it'll be. I don't know if it'll be weird. Would it? Like, I guess. It's
an interesting thought because I mean, Bowman first is, I think I'm more with you, Clark. I'd be pretty, no matter what and how great it was. And I mean, this is pretty good. Like Wembanyama auto, like that's pretty crazy. I think it'd be really hard for that to catch on. I think baseball, for some reason, got lucky and it just became a thing. Like, it's just hobby logic. Like, why is a draft card worth more than the Major League Rookie card? Like, the Major League Rookie, that's been the thing over the history of time. But somehow the Bowman first became a thing in the last, number of years. So it's a hobby logic thing. So I don't know. It'd be an interesting case study to see if this really does become a thing and if it actually does catch on for basketball.
Yeah. And the only other thing I wanted to say was, like, we're all totally excited for Victor Wembanyama to play in the NBA, but it's not a guarantee he's going to have a Hall of Fame career. No. You know what I mean?
No. I think people are just excited for the next chase. They like Zion was supposed to be like the next biggest thing, and I mean, it's not saying that he's not talented, but I think a lot of people were left disappointed. So the next thing ends up being, who's the next chase? Who's the next chase? And this hobby is all about chase.
Right? Exactly. So that's a good. It's a good reminder. Let's keep our perspective on things. Let's get excited. The chase is always exciting, but don't mortgage your house for a Wemby first auto, 1 of 1. All right. So that's the tip of the day. All right. Let's go on to our next segment we call Hobby Headlines. All right. Today I was taking a look at the CardLadder index to see the movement of card prices across the 4 major sports. I'm talking about baseball, of course, basketball, football, and hockey. And as expected, we're still in a market correction phase with card values in general declining since the hobby boom in early 2021. But some sports cards have seen a steeper decline in their respective sports card values. So the question I have for you guys is, do you think we're close to the bottom for some of these cards? And if you think we are, which cards do you think might be a good buy soon? Okay, but before you answer, here's some context of how much card values have dropped by sport according to the CardLadder indexes, which, if you don't know what the index is, it takes an aggregate daily value of key sports cards in each sport category. All right, so let's start with baseball. The baseball index from CardLadder shows that it's at the same level it was back in July 2021. Okay, so I always say peak hobby is like early 2021, Jan, Feb, March. So a little bit after that. And over the past year over year, the index has dropped 12% in value for baseball cards. Okay, basketball index has dropped to around the same level it was in December 2020, right before the big hype. Over the past year, it's dropped 45%. So basketball has dropped a lot, comparatively speaking. Football index has dropped to around the same level it was in February 2021. So we're back at peak prices. And over the past year, the index has dropped 45% as well, same as basketball. And lastly, the hockey index has dropped to around the same level it was back in August 2021. And over the past year, it's dropped about 11%. Okay, so in summary, the biggest drops are in basketball and football year over year, and essentially since the hobby hype. And baseball and hockey also dropped, but not as much, like a quarter of how much basketball and football has dropped.
Interesting. I think we kind of expected it to be a market correction for the past year. We've been saying this, and I personally don't think we're at the bottom. It correlates between, all markets. Real estate is definitely going to be, a big factor. Even interest rates are obviously going to play a role in everything, cost of borrowing and everything. But something to note around here too is, you notice, the huge drops of basketball and football, and not saying that this is a direct correlation, but something to note that, Panini is, responsible for that basketball and football, whereas, baseball's always been Topps run, and, hockey for the most part, Upper Deck. So that's something to note. Not saying that it's a direct correlation that basketball, football, and Panini, are the reason why the market is tanking. like it, but I think that just shows you that, tops have been around. They've been around for a long period of time. So you don't see as much volatility and I also think baseball, you don't see as much of a drop because you have prospecting. The game of prospecting keeps the hobby hot. It goes hand in hand with release dates. I think Topps does a really good job with keeping people engaged with that. And we always say, prospecting and, just investing in cards in general for long term are totally two different, games, right? So a lot of people try to justify why does, someone who's played, X amount of double A games, compared to like a Bo Bichette or, a Jordan Alvarez or Mookie Betts or Paul Goldie, like someone who's established so much, how could they be worth more than that? And that's the typical logic that I think everybody should use, right? But then now you have your variables, you have your factors, who's at play, who are these game players that dictate these prices? Why aren't people like Goldie selling? Why do people chase Wander? And you want to kind of play in that game, whatever you want to do. And as you study those trends of the market, you'll kind of get a better understanding, I'd say. And I think that's the numbers that you presented for baseball, I think are a little skewed because I think Bowman prospecting really helps that value to always keep it up somewhat. But
Sure.
I think if you take away Bowman, you'll see a lot of cards are in the double digit drops, 40, 50% drops. So that's something to note as well. And I think just in general, baseball has been consistent. Hockey is a relatively new market in terms of, in the hobby. It was very, very niche, specifically in the northern parts of, North America. So hockey's relatively new, but I think basketball and football obviously took the biggest dump. Something that was expected because that's volatility. You knew exactly when you're in the height of the hobby, what were you buying and selling in terms of the crazy, crazy prices? They were basketball and football. They're driven by, Mahomes, Joe Burrows, Justin Herbert, all the quarterbacks that, were technically way overpriced. And you could do the same thing with Luka's market. You take a look at Luka's market and it's taking a dump right now. And, this guy's still unbelievable. He's going to go down, still as an unbelievable basketball player. And I think there's opportunity there. But at the end of the day, that's how high the market was. It was so high, whereas baseball was kind of sitting in the middle. It's like, yeah, if you invest in Luis Robert, then you probably see a little more than, the 12% loss. But stuff like that, that's what we were dealing with realistically, right? So I think overall the numbers are a little, you got to have some context to it. But overall, I think, the market's going to continually drop and correct because in any recession, not saying that, I've been part of many recessions, but like it's all correcting. That's what happens during a recession. It's like even businesses, you take it from a business standpoint, people who are in it for the money will end up leaving the space. So same with the hobby. It's like people who are in it to the flip, they're going to leave the space because there's no opportunity in a bear market. You can't short the market, right? So it's like, if anything, you got the real people, real collectors that are staying in and, with Fanatics and Golden and all that, trying to market it to kind of like the generic public. I think that's where the growth will eventually come and steady. But yeah, all this info is good info at the end of the day. It gives you kind of perspective of, if you invested in basketball probably last year or over the last 2 years, you probably lost half of your money. So that's in conclusion, that's
Right.
basically what it's saying.
I hear ya.
I'll add to Hyung's point about basketball and football. And I think a lot of that also has to do with the power of Panini Prism, the brand. I mean, there's no question. I think Panini Prism is the king of hyped products over the last number of years. Like that is the product to go after, right? Like you look at the resale numbers on hobby boxes on Panini Prism, anything like across football and hobby, it's insane versus like Topps Chrome, Flagship, et cetera, right? So that also goes to show there. In terms of your question, market correction, I think we're flirting with the bottom. And I used like, 3-4 months ago, I think on record we were kind of saying that this looks like it's the bottom.
Yeah.
I think it feels like it is, and we're pretty close. But because what's happening in real life, the economy, inflation, interest rates, and it's still kind of going. That story is still kind of chugging along. I don't think we'll see the true correction until that kind of all really, really settles and it starts to rebound. So I think this correction, this bottom, what I thought was a bottom, I think it's going to last a little. I'm kind of with Hyung. I'm suspecting it might last a little bit longer. But in this time, if you're one to try to get some of your money in right now, I think you definitely stay away from volatility, because I think like modern cards, especially anything ultra modern are the ones that are going to be, I think still has a lot to drop. Certain players, like look at Luka, the golden child of the hobby. He doesn't make the playoffs after 3 years. He fails to make it this year. Sorry, he doesn't succeed in the playoffs last couple of years. He doesn't make it this year, and everybody's like, "Oh, see, Luka, he's not
right.
the guy. Like it's over. Like he's not winning any championships. Like he's not the guy, right?" And all of a sudden, everyone's just bailing on Luka. So, I mean, it shows in betting in current players, like that's the risk. No matter how amazing. Look at Patrick Mahomes. He's won 2 Super Bowls. He's had like 3 or 4 almost like finals appearances in his like short career, and his cards are still not doing amazing, right? Like it just goes to show like modern players, ultra modern, I think is the one to kind of stay away from. And if you're gonna dip your money into anything right now, I would probably go for your Grail cards that are older, that are very rare. I mean, we can go even a little bit more modern for me would be like Barry Bonds, Tiffany, and then you're going back into some of the older like vintage, like, like Clark, we were kind of talking about Jackie Robinson and stuff like that. I think those are the kind of moves to make right now, because those are the ones during this uncertainty of the correction, whether we feel like it's right now or if it's 6 months from now, if it's 12 months from now. I could myself personally, if you put your money in those cards, I feel, my opinion, that 6 months from now, if there is a little bit of a bigger correction, like those cards may either see no correction, or if it does drop a bit, it'll be very minimal. Like, you'll see like a 5% drop, like one card sold for $5,000 and the other one sold for $47.90 or, something like that. Right. So
sure. Yeah. Right.
I could see those cards being protected the most in the next couple of months. So if you were to put money, I would think, some of the older stuff would be better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good advice. Yeah, I hear you guys on, like, when you look at baseball, and I was looking at some of the cards that they include to make up the index, and by far, in terms of the index of the other sports, a lot of it is vintage in the baseball card index, and those aren't as volatile, right? So that kind of almost anchors it a little bit better than basketball or football. Right. And to your point, on the other end of the spectrum, a lot of the volatility in basketball is from the modern and ultra modern cards that are part of the index, and the swings are huge, right? Even Michael Jordan, his 1986 Flair. I wonder how much that card will be worth, Michael Jackson.
I would love an 86 Michael Jackson. That would be so badass.
It would have to be a Leaf Pop Century type card. But no, like the 1986 Flair of Michael Jordan, has seen huge drops.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's definitely impacting the basketball card index, and as well as all the Panini Prism products that have seen, go to the mountain peaks during the hype of the hobby, and now it's, plummeted, right? So yeah, it kind of makes sense to me to see basketball and football just see those tremendous drops. That being said, it's so tempting to pick up some of these cards now.
100%.
Some of it is definitely a trap. Like the Zion Silver Prism, it's a trap. Don't do it.
Yeah.
The Luka Doncic Silver Prism. Now that I sold it, it's a trap, guys. It's going to be under $1,000. By the end of this year, it's going to be under $1,000.
I believe it.
Fortunately,
I believe it.
And
that's crazy.
And it hurts me. But now that I have, $1,500 or so in the bank after I sold it, I'm looking to reinvest in cards that have seen, that were like 3,000 or 4,000, but now they're 2,000 or 1,500. Do you know what I mean?
And that's not a bad move, Clark. If you think of you might have like lost on that particular card, but the market's down in general. You could lateral move that into a better card with better potential that ends up, making you, that money back eventually, right? So
or that has better potential to grow in the future, right? It's like I think of it as a trade. Just say, like, for example, I'm trading my Luka Doncic silver for a J-Rod autograph Bowman, first Bowman.
Right.
I'd rather have that card now in this kind of market than the silver prism of Luka.
Although I think J-Rod's market's kind of going down.
Also,
now.
We're gonna talk about it for my pick one. Okay, we'll hold on to that thought because we'll have a good debate there. But so but let's go back to the whole market correction. Are there any specific cards that you're like, wow, the prices are getting to a point where, I know what the peak was, and now it's getting tempting to pull the trigger on?
For sure.
Any of those cards for you?
Just seeing, like, even last episode we talked about, what Golden's doing, Fanatics is doing.
Right.
And I think for me, like, when I look at it at like a macro lens and see all this, and it's like, after you read and listened and did your own research, what did you conclude? Like, for me, after seeing all this and seeing everything, it's like, what do you conclude? That supply and demand will always dictate value. Like, I want to make that clear. So we talk about Luka silvers, Zion silvers. It's like, why would something like that tank if, obviously prices are dictated on performance, and, you're going to have your daily volatility based on, performance, right? But we're talking about supply demand, true supply demand. So I look at the, King of Collectibles. What makes something $1 million? Why would someone pay, enormous amounts of money on a card? And that's the line of thinking that, I preach. It's like, we could talk about volatility in each market, and you could go and pretty much day trade. You're day trading when you're looking at, the volatility of the market, and you're trying to just flip, right? Like, I think it all depends on where you're at. Like, if you're trying to flip in a bear market, you're going to have bear market rallies like you see, on product release. You see bear market rallies always. It's like the initial hype. It's like, something happens. It's like the prices go nuts, and then boom, it corrects, right? And it's a slow, steady, decline from there, right? So I think it's important to just understand, like, supply and demand becomes, at the end of the day, why something becomes scarce. So focusing on, long-term investments rather than kind of like, I feel like, in 6 months I could cash out on this card. And it goes back to buying what you love. Because if it's like somebody as a player that you truly believe, and then it becomes a rare card of that player, and you absolutely love that card because you love the way the player plays, and you also love the scarcity and how rare that card is, and you put grading on top of that, how scarce grading is, that makes the card scarce. Now we're talking about value, like true value. Let's just say everything, stop. But obviously sports doesn't stop, because then you have to stop sports gambling. You have to stop Vegas. You have to stop all these things. So that's not like logical, right? So that's what I'm saying. When markets correct, what holds value at the end of the day? Right. And that's the whole point. It's like all these releases that we rip and stuff like that. You're seeing a boom in the market because, the initial hype, but we all know that, market corrections happen. Right. So that's my big thing is scarcity, is buy scarcity, buy what you love. So if you believe in a player, do your research, find out what cards are scarce and what cards are in demand, and what are the blue chip cards. So for instance, the first Bowman in baseball will probably be the most demanded card. So you probably want to go after that, but you have to, make that decision. Is it overpriced, or is it, inflated? And sometimes you see that with guys like Fernando Tatis Jr., Mike Trout. You have other guys that, like, these cards command thousands and thousands of dollars, but some of the rookie cards might have opportunity where they can grow, right? So it's like buying off of scarcity and understanding, extrapolating data from previous cards, I think is good to understand. Like, for instance, Mike Trout, Bowman Sterling. How does Mike Trout's Bowman Sterling hold up compared to like a Topps update? You'll get a better idea of whether you should invest in Bowman Sterling or not in a player that you believe is in the future, because you could extrapolate the data of supply and demand, and then you put in all the filters of or factors of, how many cards were there at the time, right? So that all plays a factor.
Yeah, excellent points. How about for you, John? Is there any cards or any one you're targeting during this time, or?
I've been kind of on a train of looking at Jackie Robinson cards, to be honest. I followed your lead and talking about like vintage, and I was just thinking, man, like maybe it's time to start looking at some of that stuff, because if I'm gonna talk about, it's better to kind of go into some of this older stuff. It's so I've been looking, and I think for my eye at least, because I'm just kind of, I'm still a collector first and foremost. I personally like the 1950 Bowman Jackie Robinson. It's like a kind of like a square card. His name isn't on the front, it's actually on the back. He's like holding a bat. It's not like an up close face image. It's
right. I see it.
Yeah, like I don't know. There's something about it. I think I really like the 51 Parkhurst Gordie Howe as well. I think that is a huge card to get across any sport. Like even if you're not a hockey collector, I think that is the vintage, primo vintage hockey card to buy. And I think it just reminds me of that card so much, from a hockey perspective going into baseball, that something about the 1950 Bowman I kind of like. So I've been looking. That's been on my watch list, and obviously it's all based on what you can afford. So I think like an SGC2 or a PSA2 would be right in my wheelhouse. PSA 1s is tough because there's such a wide spectrum of condition and damage on a PSA 1, because PSA 1 is basically if you're not a PSA 1.5, you're just into this giant category of PSA 1s, which could be anywhere from rounded corners to like giant creases to like 4 folds and like, no, like half of the image missing. It could be anything, like a wide variety of stuff, right? So I think I prefer like a minimum of like, and the 1950 Bowman, I mean, hopefully not too many people are listening to me, but it seems pretty affordable versus some of the other because I think he's got cards from 48 or 47 all the way to like 50.
48 Leaf is
that's right, and then all the way to like 1956 Topps or something, right? Which, by the way, I do like the 1956 Topps too, but
iconic.
Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I think what Hyung said about economics and demand, that is number one. Like you're looking at pop control, coupled with the value investor who we had on as a guest when he's talking about going after the top 1%, going after the 100 best cards of a certain player. I think those are two. Obviously, this all comes down to what you can afford. Not everyone can afford multi-$1,000 cards, but you can find gems. You can find deals of certain players that you never thought you could have ever had, right? Like for Clark, you and I, like our kind of wheelhouse is like, a big purchase for us would be like $2,000 to $5,000, right? And for example, your Mike Trout, like that was a card that we never would have thought would be at the $5,000 mark,
exactly.
Right? So you start looking at that kind of wheelhouse for you as a collector, right? So if your big card is like $1,000 card or $1,500 card, you start searching around, seeing what could be available to you for that amount of money, and perhaps it is like a Nolan Arenado, Bowman first gold refractor auto or something like that, right? Like it doesn't even it could be like a BGS 85, but it's only numbered out of 50, and boom, there you go, right? You got one of the rarest cards of Nolan Arenado, right? So I think that's the kind of mindset you should probably take.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you 100%. And that's kind of my mindset personally. Like I look at all the cards that 2 years ago, like the Mike Trout, for instance, is a good one, right? That was over 20,000. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll never buy that card. And now you're like, okay, I sell a few cards. I can consolidate and get this card that I really wanted that I thought I could never get.
Right.
And I'm kind of doing the same now. Like it's such a fun time to look to see, like you're saying, what's your budget, and see what you can, suddenly afford in terms of what you really wanted a couple of years ago that it was just way out of your budget, right? So like, and for me, it's like even if it's a BGS 9, if it's within my budget, but it goes to what you guys were saying, that it's scarce, i.e. it's numbered, or there's an autograph to it, which creates its own scarcity, I'm all for it, you know? So like I'm looking at, for example, the 2009 Topps Chrome Steph Curry. His base is numbered to 999. It lasts sold for $6K, so it's a bit much, but I mean, at its peak, it was $21,500.
Wow, this is a BGS 10.
This is a BGS 9,
BGS 9,
right? So you know what I mean? Like, to your point, you look at what your budget is. Like 5,000-6,000 would be another Grail card that I would be adding to my collection. But do I really want it? So other cards that I'm kind of looking at all the time now is any Luka Doncic autos. You know, like autographed cards of Luka Doncic. Like I'm still a big believer, and you know people can start dumping, and this is a great time to pick up some that you know probably couldn't afford a couple years ago, right? Or lesser players if you want to go. Like for me, I talked to Hyung about this off the air, like Bo Bichette, first Bowman Chrome blue refractor, getting the color match, right? Like, for sure. You know, during the hobby hype, it was way overpriced. Now it's still kind of overpriced, but every once in a while you'll see one on auction that's going to go for $1,500 maybe, and that'd be a good price for a blue refractor number to 150, right. You know, a BGS 9.5. So I got a ton of cards on my watch list like that, you know. it's like, damn, I could, pull the trigger on it. I just got to figure out which one I really want, and then you know, like you make at the same time I'm making these, prospecting plays that you hope to hit in the future. So you're kind of balancing it out, right? Like you're getting your Grail cards when you can at the right price, but then you're also betting on the future a little bit, you know.
So it seems like modern cards are kind of like the flip to make that cash, to dump money into kind of like a Grail card that you build your portfolio. And I think that formula is an amazing way to like, and that's the thing. It's like everybody has different strategies. Some people like playing in the flipping game, and they just take their profits and then move into the other cards, and then they don't care if it's a superfractor or whatever. And whereas a collector is like, okay, you know, this is something that, you know, I'm going to keep in my collection and, you know, look at it long term. And I think it all depends on what type of collector you are at the end of the day. There's no right way to collect or right way to invest. I think it all depends on kind of like your passion and what you like to do personally. And, you know, if you like to make profit always, then probably flipping is your game, right? And it's like, you know, I've done that part, and, you know, it has its thrills, and obviously I still flip when I can on the modern cards, and even on like older cards, you know, flip for a profit, and then maybe you take your money in ways that, you know, you potentially think that you can make more money, right? So it's like the strategies are all different, and that's the beauty of the hobby. Is like John or Clark, you could, you know, have one way of thinking of this is a good investment, and I could have a totally different view of that point because I'm thinking at it at a totally different, you know, timeline, for instance, right? So I think that's the beauty of the, you know, flexibility of the style that fits your kind of like personal life. Exactly. Well said.
So and you know, some people are just collectors too, mostly collectors. We could have this debate again, collectors versus investors, but yeah, you guys do you, and some people like to, you know, have, this is purely strictly a hobby. You work a full-time job, and you like to spend, you like to save up for that card you always want to have. So that's a viable strategy too, right? So we'll always be monitoring the markets. Just bringing value to you guys. We'll keep you guys informed in that front. Okay, let's move on to our next segment. This is a new segment, and I think it'll be a fun one. I'm calling it Quiz Show. Okay, so this is just what it sounds like. It's going to be like a quiz show. I got 4 or 5 questions for you that I think it's interesting, hobby-related kind of questions, and you guys just kind of guess what the answers might be. And quick shout out to Eric Whiteback, the collectibles guru. I got some of the interesting tidbits of information from his Twitter feed, and I dug up a couple of other, I think, are lesser known facts about the hobby. Okay, you guys ready for the quiz show?
Let's do it.
All right. Question number 1. What's the first year Topps produced its first one-of-one superfractor cards?
Oh, boy.
Oh, man.
Which has been a staple in sets ever since this year.
Topps. Huh. Superfractor, eh?
Yeah, the first year Topps produced.
So I'm going to
superfractor.
say, man, I'm going to say 2001.
2001? Okay.
2001.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
You think it's before or after that?
I think it's
by your response,
I think
John.
it's actually, I don't know, because I'm trying to think of like the basketball ones.
Right.
I'm just thinking of Chrome cards. That's why. I'm thinking of Chrome, like, because superfractors are based off Chrome.
Yeah.
So when was the Chrome market? Like, you know what I mean?
That's good reasoning. That's good reasoning.
That's kind of that was my thought process. If anybody cared, like, I'm 3 scotches.
At the end of the day,
deep, so
it's a guess in the dark, right?
I don't remember if I remember seeing any in 08. I do know that I remember seeing some images of people saying, where the heck is the Steph Curry superfractor? So I'm gonna guess 2009.
All right. Wow. Yeah. The answer is right between 2005.
2005.
Oh, interesting. Okay, there you go.
You split the difference. Okay, this is kind of a 1A, 1B question. Which superfractor has sold for the most money?
All time.
I gotta say, 2011 Bowman Chrome Mike Trout superfractor.
2009?
2009. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's the Vegas Dave, right? 1.1 million or 1. What was it? 1.9 million.
Well, it was 3.84 million.
Oh, never
which
mind.
is the correct answer.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
The 2009 Bowman Chrome Mike Trout one-of-one superfractor sold for a record-breaking 3.84 million. Yeah. All right. Next question. Only 3. I like this one. Only 3 baseball players in MLB history who have been drafted number 1 overall. All right. So 3 MLB players who have been drafted number 1 overall had one of their cards sell for 6 figures. Who are they?
Not a lot of number 1 picks pan out.
Right.
It ain't
only
that
3.
Tough.
Apparently, according to the collectibles guru, only 3 of them have sold cards that are worth 6 figures.
Which baseball player has sold
So you got
6 figures?
first. You got to guess who the number 1 draft picks are.
That's hard for me. Like I'm gonna have to rely on him
figures,
here.
eh?
I might have to Google some of this stuff.
Oh man, I wouldn't even know where to start. I'm thinking it might have to be a modern player because,
Right?
well, if
Yeah.
it's superfractor, right? Was it a superfractor or
No. It's just a sells for 6 figures.
sold
Any
for
card.
6 figures?
Yeah.
Any card. Huh.
I'll give you guys clues because it is a hard one just to even guess the
Yeah.
right players.
Can I
right,
Google some of the
this-
number ones?
Sure, but I'll give you the first one while you Google that up.
Yeah.
He plays. He currently plays. 2 of them currently play, and 1 of them is retired.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll give you the one of the ones that are currently playing. Philadelphia Phillies.
Oh,
Bryce
Bryce Harper.
Right.
Okay.
His 2011 Bowman Chrome Superfractor rookie auto, BGS 9.5, sold for $432,000.
Wow, that's a good sale.
Damn.
That's
That's a really
highest.
good sale.
That's the highest 6-figure sale by a
Huh.
number 1 draft pick. Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking at.
All right,
I'm
number
looking at the list
2.
now. I think I know the other one.
Okay. Why didn't you list some of the players on that
Yeah,
list?
yeah. Let's hear this.
Yeah. Okay. Hang on. Sorry. Let me go back up. My computer is.
What sport we talking about here?
So we got
Baseball.
It is baseball.
Jackson Holiday. We're
All
starting
baseball,
from 2022. Jackson Holiday, Henry Davis, Spencer
Yeah.
Torkelson, Ali Rutschman.
No.
Kate.
Well, you said it was retired, right?
Yeah,
1 retired.
Yeah, I know that. I know the
2
retired one. We'll
current.
get to it. Casey Mize,
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Royce Lewis,
Yeah.
Mickey Moniak, Dansby Swanson, Brady Aiken, Mark Apple, Carlos Correa, Garrett Cole, Bryce Harper, Steven Strasburg, Tim Beckham, David Price, Luke Hochevar, I don't know how to pronounce, Justin Upton, Matt Bush, Delman Young, Brian Bullington, Joe Mauer. Oh man, these names are brutal. Adrian Gonzalez, Josh Hamilton,
Nice.
Pat Burrell, Matt Anderson, Chris Benson, Darren Erstad, Paul Wilson.
Stop at the one you think it is.
And then
the
right
one
here,
that's
Alex
retired.
Rodriguez.
Correct. That's the second one,
Okay.
A-Rod. His 1994 SP foil die cut PSA 10 sold for $115,000.
So
there's somebody in between
I'm just
that
throwing
list
this out there.
that's still.
I'm just saying that for all those Tatis PED haters, is there a chance? I'm just saying.
There's a chance.
Yeah,
that's
there
a
you
great
go.
point.
There's
Yeah.
a chance.
There's a-
Look at A-Rod. Don't look at Barry Bonds. Look at A-Rod's
Yeah.
card sale. And number 3 is you mentioned it obviously.
I gotta guess it's like Adley Rutschman, somebody really really young.
Yeah, you mentioned when you went down the list. It was pretty early on. You mentioned it. You might be surprised.
Ooh.
It's a modern card.
Yes.
I will say,
Can't be a pitcher, can it? Like Garrett Cole?
Huh?
No.
No, not a pitcher.
I'll tell you the card without the year. Okay.
Okay.
It's Bowman Draft Red Refractor number to 5 PSA 10.
Red refractor. Oh my gosh, I have no.
Don't tell me it's Spencer Torkelson.
It is
Oh.
Spencer
Please
Torkelson.
don't tell me it's Spencer Torkelson.
2020 Bowman Draft Red Refractor PSA 10. Spencer Torkelson. Someone paid $111,000.
My heart
for
goes
it.
out to.
That's
and kudos
that
to you.
hurts. Yeah,
Oh,
that
wow.
hurts.
That does.
I could live with Bryce
Harper.
Harper. I could live with A-Rod. Those are good.
Torkelson's
you know.
a little tough.
Yeah.
A little tough. A little.
That
bit.
was bad timing. That was,
It's still
got caught
early
up in
though.
the hobby
You
hype.
know, it
True.
ain't an L until you sell. All right. There's hope.
All right, that was kind of fun. I got a couple more. All right. Okay, this is one I thought of. Did a James Wood 2022 first Bowman Chrome Auto Red Lava Refractor number to 5 sell for more or less than $10,000 raw?
I think I know who sold it. I'm gonna say over.
I'm gonna say over too.
Yeah, this is the way I asked it, right? Barely over $10,999.
Oh,
Holy
man,
cow!
wow.
That's a risk. That's
But
a risk.
I will say something. Whoever bought it for 10K plus, I'm not saying that James Wood is like he's gonna be good. He's the dude's 6'7". He's 20 years
Yeah,
old.
right.
He hits. He's a pretty big prospect, but I'm just saying, like that's a little aggressive on the. On the
And
raw
it's a red
purchase.
lava. It's not
It's
even
a lava.
red.
Yeah,
If it
it's
was
not
true,
even true red.
you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, last question. Which company, and this is kind of a historical question, which company released the first ever NBA basketball trading card set in 1948?
Holy. 1948 basketball, eh? I'm not a big basketball guy, so I wouldn't know.
Okay. I'll tell you a little bit about it. It was a 72-piece set that included the George Meekin rookie card.
Oh man, it's embarrassing. We should probably know this.
I'm lost. Yeah, like
Okay.
no, basketball is definitely not my game.
That's okay. I like this question because I thought it was interesting what the answer was. It was Bowman.
Bowman.
I was gonna
company.
say that. I was actually gonna say
really?
that. 1948 Bowman sounded right, actually.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because, you don't really think about Bowman with basketball.
Right.
But back then, it was.
yeah.
All right. I thought that was fun. We'll do this again. I'll think of 4 or 5 more questions next time. And we'll learn more things about the hobby that we love. All right. Let's finish this show with our regular weekly segment we call Pick One. And as usual, Hyung, do you want to start things off?
I absolutely will. And I'm actually gonna, it was funny because you messaged in our group chat, somebody commented on the 5 card guys or Cards to the Moon post asking about a particular card, and I wanted
Right.
to bring that up because it was a good pick one, and it goes to our fellow listener Josh Clapham. He's a listener of our podcast, and he wanted to put out a pick one out there, and I thought it was interesting because I'm actually a fan of kind of like the card he chose, just because I'm a big collector in this sense where. Like you said, I've been on the chase for an Ohtani auto. Like for me, 2018, 2019, 20 in the beginning of 2020, and then Ohtani kind of switches autos. Some people that doesn't really matter, but to me that's a big thing for me. But he basically wanted to know, would you invest in a 2019 Bowman's Best? Okay, Bowman's Best, not Bowman Chrome, Bowman's Best, but it is a dual auto of Mike Trout and Ohtani. Okay, and it's numbered on card auto. It's numbered out of 25. So this is Ohtani's second year. So if you're to look at 2018, obviously this would fetch a premium if it was a Trout Ohtani rookie or auto. Second year, would you invest in that? And I'm gonna tell you, there's not a lot sold in the last 2 years, but. Before the whole big pump, there's a few sales for like 1,500 or so like that. But there's one listed for 3,600. So we'll say one available for 3,600. Or would you invest in a 1953 Topps Mickey Mantle PSA 10? Or sorry, not PSA 10. PSA 2. We're so used to saying PSA 10s because, the PSA just
PSA 10 for $250,000.
PSA 2, sorry. PSA 2, 1953 Topps. Mickey Mantle. So the second year, 52 Topps was the iconic, Topps Mantle. Would you go invest in vintage rather than the Ohtani Trout auto numbered to 25? Ooh. And this is a raw versus a PSA 2. And the last that sold, I believe for the PSA 2 was 4,200, and the asking price on the only available Ohtani Trout auto out of 25, they're asking 3,600 or best offer. What's the better investment for you guys?
Ooh, all right.
Go ahead, Johnny.
Well, I'm gonna say this. So Josh was the listener that sent this in.
Yeah.
I'm kind of, I from a collector standpoint, I side with him because I would love to have an on-card Trout Ohtani auto, and it's the right Ohtani auto. It's not his third one, the one that looks like it's like a C and then a little bit of a scribble on the bottom. It's the other one. Right. That's the right auto. I personally think that. I mean, if we're gonna sit here and talk about four grand and which one, it's a 1v1. So which one for $4,000? Which one would you put your money in? I'm gonna automatically choose the Mickey Mantle because number one, the vintage, and number two, I think it's worth that $4,000 price. For Josh on this particular card, if he's wondering if he should make a move on it for $4,000, I think personally, because I was curious and I looked at some comps, and Trout and Ohtani have a lot of dual autos. Like they seemingly autograph dual autos almost every year, right? So there's a number of these that have been pumping out. So I think now it comes down to either obviously rookie year of Ohtani, those are the ones that go for the premium, and then number two, the appeal. So if it's like a really nice design, like a Topps Dynasty, obviously it's going to have a high value, and then Bowman Best or some of the lower end ones, it's gonna it's got to look nice. And his particular one, the Bowman Best, it looks pretty nice. But I think he should be able to get it for like 25. I think. I don't know if he's already made offers for it or not. But I've seen some comps kind of like in that sort of like 2,000, 2,500 raw. We're talking raw, right? So which makes sense. I think $4,000 for that card seems a bit expensive. So automatically, if you're talking about $4,000 1v1, it has to go to the Mickey Mantle because I don't think this particular Bowman's Best dual auto is worth $4,000 raw. So yeah, that's by default I have to choose it. But I will say that I if you're asking me, hey, you can have one of these cards for free, like I would be pretty tempted with that Ohtani Mike Trout auto because I want.
Okay, John. Yeah. Question: What would the price be? So let's just say the Mantle was $4,000, right. And then what would your price be?
So if you're saying like if they're matched up together?
Yeah, no, I'm just saying What? Yeah, if would it be 2,500? Would it be 2,000? Right. Where you would pick the Trout Ohtani? Right. What price would that be?
Interesting. I think $2,000. I think if you told me that this was a $2,000 card, I think it would, in terms of what for a collector standpoint and in terms of upside, I think $2,000's not bad. I could see you being able to move that card, short term, long term, whichever it is. And it's the right auto, right? Like, I don't know if Shohei autographs like that anymore, right? All his seems like he's using the C for almost everyone post 2019 or 2020. So, it's the right auto. I would say $2,000 would be a steal. Like, that's the mark. I'd be like, yeah, that's the one I pick over the Mickey Mantle.
What about you, Clark?
Oh man, this is a hard one. But as John was talking, I was kind of going back and forth in my head. And it's a good point. I didn't think about what you said about there's more dual autos of Trout and Ohtani than you probably think, and it kind of makes sense because they play on the same team, so it's probably easy to sign, have them both sign on the same card, right? But at the same time, the danger with dual autos is if one player doesn't pan out, right?
Like Kobe, Gary Payton.
I don't
Who's
think
not going to pan out? Who's not going to pan out? Trout or Ohtani?
No, you didn't let me finish. You didn't let me finish. So I was just gonna say, I don't think that's a concern
here.
for this card.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay, sorry, I jumped the gun.
We're not talking Kobe, Andrew Bynum.
Yeah. Right.
Those are the words.
I wasn't gonna say Trout's done or Ohtani's done, guys. So, so yeah, I think that's safe, right? And it's on card. Bowman's best is sure it's not Bowman's Chrome, but if both players, like I believe, will continue to just really do well individually, maybe not for the Angels, but just build upon their legacy, a dual card of both these players, I think it can be very valuable down the road.
Right.
Whereas, I don't know if it's because of the marketing conditions now. We talked about this in our previous segment, scarcity, right? Like, there's almost 600 of those PSA 2s.
Right.
And there's about 600 PSA 3s. And if you add it all up, it kind of adds up to,
a decent
over 1,000
number,
for sure. Or over 2,000, I would think. And funny enough, the PSA 3, the last sold price was 3,700.
It's lower. It was lower than the PSA 2. But I also think that PSA 3 will sell for more in modern. I don't know when that last sale was, but
last week.
Oh, it was?
Damn.
Okay, maybe not. Then
Yeah.
And these cards, though, by the way, like
PSA
PSA 2s could sell for more than PSA 3s. That's common in vintage because of the way the card looks, right? Like most, like
if it has a peel
exactly,
and
like the 2 could be in worse condition, but if it's
Higher
perfectly
peel.
centered, some people prefer to pay more for that, right?
Right.
Good point. So, but I'm leaning towards Ohtani and Trout.
Interesting.
Ooh.
Especially if Johnny's right. If I could negotiate it down, for sure. I would.
Yeah.
I feel pretty confident that Josh could talk that number
But
down.
even then, even if it was 37, just say, right? I don't know. Maybe it's because I love Ohtani, I love Trout. I would just like that more personally to just hold on to that card.
Right.
And then we always say collect what we love.
Right.
Mickey Mantle's iconic, but I never saw him play. You know what I mean? Like, it means more to have a card like Trout and Ohtani.
Right.
Nice. No, fair enough. I'm actually on the lines of Clark as well, where, I view vintage as kind of like the end goal. Like, it's the real estate, the real estate you never sell. So it's what you build up towards. So a PSA 2 is like, I'm not dogging on a PSA 2, but if I'm going to carry a 1953 Topps and I want to, include it in my portfolio, I'm going to work towards the best graded 53 Topps I can get.
Right.
Not necessarily setting for like a lower grade PSA 2. And not saying that won't be a good investment from long term. I'm sure it's going to, be a great investment. But I just feel like, the rarity and scarcity of Ohtani and Trout, that card, plus the scarcity of Ohtani's auto, plus the relevancy of Ohtani and Trout in modern, society today and how they impact. Like, Ohtani's about to sign for whatever he is, 600 million or whatever stupid amount. Like, this is something that, collectors, I think, go hand in hand with. They like to see, their investments actually play out. Whereas, vintage is more of the end goal. I think when you're portfolio building and, hey, this is something that I'm going to pass on from generation to generation, right? So I wouldn't personally be settled for a PSA 253 tops. I would always want to upgrade that. So if I'm going to be in that context, I rather go with a card that's more volatile or has potential where, hey, you know what? If Ohtani keeps it up or if Trout keeps it up and it's a good buy-in, so 3,600 obviously is way above comps. And sometimes you have to overpay for cards like that because they're so scarce. But it might be overpaying now to underpay in a future time period, right? So for me, I'm going to pick the Ohtani and Trout auto just because, if I'm going to go with a 53 tops, I'm going to try getting, my hands on a PSA 6, for instance, or a PSA 7 or something that might be just a little bit more, but, in a better grade where it has more eye peel. And then that's when I would kind of like settle for, okay, I'll rather invest in Mantle over Trout Ohtani auto.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good 1v1. I just want to add before we go to yours, John, next. I'm looking at all the PSA values from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for Mickey Mantle's 1953 tops. It's just a steady climb,
right?
Like a gradual climb. There's there's not that spike in volatility. It's like a mutual fund. Like you could be safe if you believe the data that it's just going to slowly go upwards. So there's your security in that, right? So it's it's not a bad choice either to go with the Mickey Mantle even in the lower grades. And if Hyung gets a PSA 7, that'll be impressive. It's 32,000 right now.
PSA 6 is last sold for 9.
Right, that's a big jump from 6.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like there's opportunity, right? Like that's why you just kind of see what it's worth. And
yes, sir.
Right.
All right, John.
That was good. Thanks, Josh. For
yes,
that 1v1.
Appreciate that for sure.
All right, you guys always do baseball, so I could kind of switch it up for the listeners. We're gonna go hockey. Pains me to say this. I hope by the time this airs, it's not the case that the Leafs are bounced, but they're kind of the laughingstock of the league right now. So we're going 2016 Upper Deck Young Guns Austin Matthews PSA 10 versus on the other side, what seemingly is the other Canadian laughingstock, although they're doing a lot better than us. What they have been a bit of a laughingstock in the past. 2014 Upper Deck Leon Draisaitl PSA 10 Young Guns. Both studs. I think we all have kind of a little bit of a bias towards the Toronto player. And both recently, most recent sales are both right at exactly $860.
So for PSA 10?
For PSA 10. 860,
wow,
860 USD
that's gone
for
along.
each.
I remember I sold my Matthews for like 2,500.
Oh,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
They used to be at like 15. Both used to be at like 1,500-ish, I think, USD.
The pop count for the Austin Matthews FYI is 2,947.
Draisaitl has to be lower than that.
It is.
I'm guessing lower, yeah. Probably like 1,200-ish.
716.
Oh, dang. And I think Draisaitl
There's my answer.
I think he's leading. He's leading scoring in the.
He's so underrated, man. That guy is so under. He's the Mark Messier of Wayne Gretzky. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's the thing. He'll always be in the shadow of.
That's a good comp. Very good comp. So what? You're going with Draisaitl here?
I'm going Draisaitl straight up. Like he's so good, man. He's so underrated, man.
But
pop count.
To your point, he's the Mark Messier.
He is the Mark Messier.
He'll always be the Mark Messier.
Would you take a PSA 10 of Mark Messier's, OPG?
But versus Steve Yzerman?
Yeah. Right.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go with Austin Matthews.
Really?
I just think I don't like the pop count. It goes everything against what I've been saying for the last month. But I think in this case, I'm going for Austin Matthews is just a more in-demand player. I think he will always be more in demand than Draisaitl. And, if the Leafs could do something, if he eventually goes to another team and wins a cup, whatever the case might be for Austin Matthews, I think that could spike. Whereas Draisaitl, he deserves more respect. But will he get it from the hobby? I'm not so sure. It's not a homer pick either. Austin Matthews.
It's for sure a homer pick.
Yeah, I know. We have to pull.
Hey, listen, you know what? I finally watched the first Leafs playoff game yesterday, and they won. So now I think I got to keep watching.
Don't get your hopes up.
3 more in a row.
Come on. I believe we can do it.
Oh, man.
Let's go.
So you went Austin Matthews.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to go Leon Draisaitl, man. Like, I just think, like, there's, one, the pop count is big on me. 2, like, this guy, okay, I'm not taking anything away from Austin Matthews, and it makes sense because we're Toronto guys, so liquidity becomes, way better with Toronto, and nobody really cares about Edmonton. So it's tough in that sense, but in terms of skill set and what Draisaitl has done, it's undeniable, regardless of what team he goes to. I don't think it's like, it's all, because he's on Edmonton and he's kind of like, sets. He's scoring goals, man. Like he's doing everything, and for me, he's just
so far.
Yeah, he's just just underrated. Like he's 100+ points a game. When's the last time you see someone, even Austin Matthews? If Austin Matthews, scores over 100 points, that's a big year for Austin Matthews, for any Leaf player. But this guy's Leon Draisaitl is doing that every single year, and his pop count is half that. And to me, it's just a matter of correction. And I'm gonna go long term with Draisaitl on the young guys, just because the pop count's gonna hold a lot better, 50% for that matter. And this guy's gonna keep on scoring 100+ points, a year, and it's gonna only a matter of time before I think people are gonna recognize his talent.
Hobby Logic. Oh man, I ultimately kind of went back and forth on this. I'm kind of with Clark in that Leon Draisaitl, anyone who watches hockey knows how elite this guy is and deserves
a stud. He's a stud.
Deserves all the respect in the world. But I don't know what it's going to take. I think there are just too many people that will continually think that he is a really good star, like Scottie Pippen, right? Like everybody who watched basketball and knows basketball, and like from the players to TV pundits, they all talked about how incredible Scottie Pippen was. But look at what happened to Scottie Pippen in his career. He will always be Robin to Michael Jordan's Batman. Always. Like he's never really talked about.
He signed a bad deal.
Scottie Pippen's not really talked about in like the top 20 all-time NBA. He's just kind of Robin, right? And I feel like that's gonna kind of happen to Draisaitl if he continues to stay in Edmonton, and I think people will question. He gets 125 points a year or whatever he gets, and they're gonna be like, well, he's probably really like a 90-point getter among the pretty good stars of the league, but he's getting the extra 30 points because of McDavid or whatever, right? And I don't know if that's not fair. It is partially true, but it's unfair to his skill set, and I don't know if that mindset would ever really change, and if he'll ever get that, that the recognition that he deserves. On the flip side, Austin Matthews. Normally, this would be a very easy pick because we're all from Toronto. Austin Matthews, even in terms of investment, he's just so liquid. When we go to the Toronto Expo, like you can move Austin Matthews cards left and right center. So that is like an easy pick there. But I do think that Austin Matthews' time is coming to a close with Toronto. I feel like if this, we end up by next week when this films and airs and the Maple Leafs happen to be out of the playoffs, I think there's gonna be a lot of talk of Matthews possibly getting traded, because honestly, in my heart, I don't think Matthews is re-signing with us when his contract's done. So we might as well try to trade and get like a killer first round pick or whatever we can get for him. And I also heard that I think he's wanting $16 million a year.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's another thing. Like, I'm sure Kyle Dubas is like, I don't know what that. So in terms of that sort of like Toronto bias, liquidity at the Expo, that's kind of coming to a close, I think, in the next 12 months. So it's still Austin Matthews by hair because you can still take advantage of that. But ask me this by next year, I think it might change.
Good one. I like that. I think we should trade Matthews for Draisaitl.
I'm down for that.
I'd love that. I'll do that.
Yeah. All right. We'll end off the show with my pick one. Okay. I teased this earlier in the show. To the 2019 Bowman Julio Rodriguez first Chrome Prospect autograph card. 2 refractors. On one side, you got the blue refractor numbered to 150, which is kind of the color match. Both graded BGS 9.5, 10 auto. Last sold for $3,900, so almost $4,000. Pop count of 73 versus the J-Rod 29 Bowman first Chrome Prospect Auto, the Atomic Refractor, which is numbered to 100, BGS 9.5, like I said, and that sold for $3,350. So about $500-$600 less, and the pop count's less. Of course, 46 at the BGS 9.5 grade.
So obviously, everybody's gonna state the obvious: color match. The question is, does it require a premium in price? Right. I don't think so, because Atomic to me is a big card. If I were to say, okay, what are like true colors? You're gonna say your orange, gold, blues, right? And that's the premium that you're gonna pay for the blue, right? And on top of that, the color match. So for me, I've owned a couple blues, and it's nice. It's very liquid, I would say. But I feel like Atomics are just as liquid. A lot of people actually like Atomics.
I mean, it's sapphire. It's basically sapphire.
It's a sapphire, and it's rare enough where it's numbered to 100, right? So I think there's value in that. I think there's value in like buying at a better price on scarcity, even though it's not the premium that the blue usually desires. So you can get more liquidity out of the blue because a lot of people like blue. But I think in terms of scarcity, I think long term you can't go wrong with Atomic because they hold value very, very well. They're 33% less than blues, so I think it's a good chance to go with Atomic in this sense. Even though I'm a big fan of true blues, I'm gonna go with Atomic in this sense with the price point and the scarcity on my side.
Okay, makes sense.
Aesthetically, I think no question the Atomic wins in hand when you look at the Atomic. It's basically the sapphire. It's amazing. But I'm for sure I would pay the premium and go for the blue. And I think both short term and long term. Short term, you got the liquidity. Long term, and again, I'm gonna point back to like conversations, the interview we had with the Value Invest. I feel like he made such an impact when I listened to some of the things he said, because I keep referring to him. Yeah. But when you're thinking about the top 1%, the grail cards of a certain player, you're going to go to Bowman first. And I think collectors now, as that focus starts to narrow long term, they're going to look at superfractor, red, orange, gold, blue, like the OG. That's what they're going to look at. They're not really going to talk about green. They're not really going to talk about Atomic. They're going to talk about those colors. So number one, you kind of have that long-term safety. And I think people's mindsets do have blue kind of right on the outskirts of grail. It's not gold, but it's right there, right? And then to boot, it's a color match, right? So I think it's a win-win in terms of short-term liquidity, and it's a win in design and look and for Seattle fans, et cetera, and then even long-term, as the narrow focuses on like the top 1% cards, I think the blue is kind of in that conversation over Atomic. So I would pay that premium and go with the blue. I'm on the other side.
Okay. Yeah, I like both reasonings. I'll be the tiebreaker. I'm going to go with the color match as well. I just think, even at the Sport Card Expo that we were just at a couple weeks ago, like just overhearing, people when they look at the different displays, they're like, oh, that's a color match. That looks nice. And Atomic, the scarcity is nice to number to 100, but like John was saying, it isn't the OG. So not even a lot of people know what the Atomic Refractor is number to, unless you collect Atomic Refractors, or unless you're a, baseball prospect collector, right? And I feel like it's a little bit cheapened. It's not it's not Bowman's fault, but it's a little cheapened by the cracked ice of basketball, which isn't numbered, right? So like it looks exactly the same, and even the sapphire, which isn't numbered, like in other baseball sets. So it looks nice, but I think in terms of eye appeal, I would actually say a lot of people prefer just color match in general, not maybe specifically blue, unless it's a color match like it is for the J-Rod card. And that's why I love Bo Bichette blue refractors, or Vladdy blue Bichette blue refractor that you have, Young. It's beauty, like because of the color match. So yeah, and it's it's a premium that's really, relative speaking, an extra $500-$600. I would go for it any day. All right, I liked all our pick ones that we did this week, and another great show. Thanks for everyone listening to Cards to the Moon. We really appreciate you if you give us a great rating if you enjoyed the show, and just even a feedback. We love reading all of them that come in. So thank you for all our listeners and subscribers once again, and we'll see you next week with a brand new show. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.